result in WINDALCO not being able to access bauxite to feed the alumina production process, and the company ceases operation. This is not a viable option. The proposed activity, which is what we've discussed, the project will be implemented within the proposed boundary of the SEPL in accordance with the environmental permits approved, and the above benefits and other advantages discussed realized. And this is the preferred option. There's also the option of investigating a new location, and this would involve finding new areas where bauxite can be mined, and these would have to be in close proximity to the plant. This is not an economical or environmental friendly viable alternative, since no other deposits exist in close proximity to the plant. There's also the use of technology, of a different technology. At present, the WINDALCO team is using the state-of-the-art technology to process their bauxite. The technology to extract boehmite from bauxite is capital intensive, and this is not an economically viable alternative. State-of-the-art environmental monitoring, evaluation, and management methods will be used by WINDALCO prior to and during the entire mining operation to fully satisfy compliance with the regulatory framework and its own internal policies and standards. The internal environment management resources of WINDALCO will be augmented as required, and they will involve experts in the field, and also the communities could be involved during these operations. The following will be monitored and effectively managed using internationally accepted best practices and in accordance with applicable regulatory framework. Noise will be monitored, air quality, water quality, waste management will be monitored, landscape impacts and visual impacts, soil conservation to ensure that the soils that are stored for reclamation are maintained in a manner that they are still useful after years of storage. Traffic and access management will be monitored, and these will all be compiled in reports and submitted to the regulators on the basis that has been agreed. So far we have gone through and summarized findings of the EIA, and we hope it was clear and all who are watching and listening got an appreciation of the amount and level of work that we had completed. We're grateful for the valuable input from all who provided their views, opinions, recommendation, and lent their voices to this process. These include, but are not limited to, the following institutions and stakeholders: the National Environment and Planning Agency, the Forestry Department, the Institute of Jamaica for providing us with a lot of the information that assisted in preparing the EIA. The Statistical Institute of Jamaica, again, provided us with some information. The Water Resources Authority for the meetings we had and the information they provided. The Jamaica National Heritage Trust for preparing the historical and heritage studies. And last but not least, for all the persons in the communities located in the SEPL that welcomed us and provided us with assistance, we thank you all. I now hand over the proceedings back to the chairperson.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mark Richards, for your presentation on the findings of the Environmental Impact Assessment. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take a short break at this point, and when we return, we'll be coming to you for your participation in this virtual meeting by way of questions and comments. We'll be right back. All right, well, we are back with our very important public meeting as we look at the special exclusive prospecting license 524 area and now anticipate your questions and comments. Thank you again for your patience and during the challenging moments, but we sorted those out eventually. All right, are we going over to Harmony Vale Baptist Church? Not quite, they're not quite ready. We do have 3 locations, Harmony Vale Baptist Church, the Jeffreyville Methodist Church, and the Grierfield Church of God. The citizens have gathered at those 3 locations to allow themselves to, I think you're sending me something on WhatsApp, but I think I'd have to, how will the compensation package be structured? I think what they're asking, will evaluation be done before you get to that point? Dr. Conrad Douglas, would you like to take that?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. The company operates, it has a policy, and clearly what it does is to determine the land ownership or land tenure. And I think that's what the person is referring to, the participant, when he spoke about compensation. There are also other types of policies that might require some amount of compensation as well, separate and apart from land. For example, in the case of, let me say, the potential for dust pollution, in which people's property could be impacted if the conditions are very harsh in terms of weather conditions, and if the wetting or irrigation regime on the roadways are not strictly maintained. In respect of the land issue, I'm going to ask Mr. Johnson.
That's Mr. Kurt Johnson?
Yes.
Would you like to take it?
To speak to that one. In respect of the dust, this is normal, and the company normally has a compensation package.
All right. Mr. Johnson, Mr. Kurt Johnson.
Land issue.
Which of the Johnsons will take this one?
Well, all right. Good afternoon, Jamaica. With respect to compensation on land, if I understand the question correctly, the viewer or listener wants to find out how do we approach land issues. Generally, it's, as Dr. Conrad Douglas says, we have a policy which strictly abides by the laws of the country. And normally what we do is we value the land and use market prices to drive that discussion. Of course, it's a case-by-case basis. And at the end of that process, persons whose lands are going to be affected in that way would then derive fair and clear compensation if that is the route that we're going to go.
So there'll be a stage where you negotiate, there's a negotiation process.
Absolutely.
Based on individual, what their circumstances are.
Absolutely.
All right. Do we have a question coming from any of the other locations? Or do we have, let me just remind you, we are doing what? Yes, go ahead. Harmony Vale, we're going to Harmony Vale Baptist Church now. Yes, so we're going over to Harmony Vale. I'm anticipating what they will have to ask.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nikisha Jackson. My main concern about everything that is happening in this project is our environment and our health. That's my main 2 concerns, the environment and the health of the people in the communities.
All right, let me ask, I'm going to ask the Human Resources. You want to take some of that, Dr. Douglas?
Yes.
Environment and health is
Thank you very
Nikisha's
much.
concern.
As Dr. Richards explained during his presentation, RUSAL will, put in practice its full environment, health, and safety policies in the process before mining activities are started and during the process of mining. And its objective is to protect the members of the community from any adverse health impact. Similarly, you must understand that they too must protect the workers that they employ, because they will be right there in the mines as well. So they take all the necessary steps to ensure that the actions are taken to protect the health of the workers.
So that question is very important.
It's a
We're
very
talking about
important
the protection of the community members, but also those persons who work
That's
at
correct.
the plant.
Everyone in the public sphere that falls within the sphere of influence of the mining activities, actions are taken to protect them. And so some of the things that we have observed, and which Dr. Richards mentioned in the presentation, is the entire laws, the regulatory framework in which the project was analyzed, and health and safety were among those things that were taken into consideration. And one of the things that we had to do in conducting the study is to do what is known as an environmental baseline assessment as well, or EBS. And so we look at what is the quality of the air, what is suspended in it in terms of the particles that are there. And we had to, well, there's another subcontractor who carried out a modeling to say what will happen with the dispersion of dust potentially, and how does this compare with the standards that exist now to protect people's health. And it shows that the activities will be compliant with the health standards.
And that's, Nikisha, I hope that answered your question.
There's another part with respect to health as well that she mentioned. That, again, Dr. Richards made mention of it in the process. This had to do with noise and vibration. And so in doing this study, we deployed several instruments, and this is in detail in the EIA report, throughout the communities and picked up what is the present baseline levels. And they were very good, very quiet, as he mentioned. And one can expect that with the mine operations, it is possible that you could have noise generated, which is more than a nuisance sometimes. And so consequently, the company will have to take the actions to make certain that their equipment are properly serviced and the proper silencers and mufflers are put in place.
As was stated in the
presentation.
We do have another person from Harmony Vale, very active. Harmony Vale, good. What time is it? Good evening. Welcome. What time is it? Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Michelle Riley. After reading the manual, I see where they said they would provide topsoil, but essential minerals will be removed, causing a setback on harvesting and overall growth of produce, which will affect livelihood of the farmers. How do you propose to assist the farmers in this area? Second question, does WINDALCO have any future plans to assist with the development of the Harmonyville community?
Thank you so much, Ms. Riley. We have two questions, which is the removal of topsoil with minerals, and then the assistance with the development of the Harmonyville community.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. To answer the first questions, Ms. Riley, first, in respect of removal of minerals, we have to be specific. The mining process entails removing by law the first 24 inches of topsoil and storing that 24 inches very carefully so that it is not lost to erosion or anything like that. And then once we are through with mining there, that is the WINDALCO, the proponent, they replace the final cover with that 24 inches.
Let me get in here. Where is the soil stored?
It is usually stored very close to where the mining is taking place.
And for how long is it kept there?
It is not kept there for too long. The rehabilitation process by law should begin 3 years after mining takes place.
Maximum.
Okay, maximum can happen, take place before that. Yeah. So no particular nutrient, mineral or element is removed from that soil. The soil, the entire topsoil, 24 inches, which contain organic substances, rich in organic substances, and some phosphates, for example, which are important nutrients. Those are removed in full and stored, and when the rehabilitation process commences, it is replaced.
So, Dr. Douglas,
And
part
so-
2, assistance for the community of Harmony-Vale.
I'll ask Mr. Johnson to...
But if I may add to what Dr.
That's
Douglas
Mr.
commented.
Kurt Johnson
Yes.
speaking.
In Dr. Richards' presentation, it was noted and should be said strongly in the minds of persons that bauxite itself does not support plant growth, right? So what we do, the process that we do of stripping the topsoil and storing it, that is the essential medium in which the farmers grow their crops, not in the bauxite itself. And that, as Dr. Douglas points out, we carefully store and preserve. So when we restore it through our tenant farming programs and our internal agricultural experts, we ensure that the soils are fully helped to produce at levels prior to mining activity.
All right. And the assistance for the community,
It's very
they want
important
to know.
it's not, it supports grassland cover very well, bauxite. And it supports certain types of crop, but it doesn't support very well our trees, large trees. And in the rehabilitation process, the company also adds fertilizer to aid the process.
Yes.
So as was shown in the slides at the very beginning, they grow, that is the farmers, a lot of crops successfully. In addition to that, the grassland supports excellent beef and dairy cattle. And this is something that was initiated by their predecessor, Alcan, which invested in the pioneering work that was carried out at Bodle's Agricultural Station to develop our internationally renowned cattle. You know,
Dr.
Jamaica.
T.P. Leckie and his team.
That's correct.
All
Thank
right.
you so much.
Let me, what we're doing, we're staying with one community, taking a number of questions. The last question will be coming from Harmony-Vale at this time. When we're through there, we'll go to another community. So let me go back to Harmony-Vale. Thank you, Michelle Riley, for those questions. Who is coming next?
We didn't answer the second part of the question.
Hang on a moment, please. Yes, Mr. Johnson. Hold on a moment, please. Hold on. You wanted to answer the assistance part.
Certainly,
How
certainly.
will the company assist the community?
Sure. Our approach is that once we are going into a community, we have consultations with different community groups. What I can say right now is that we have looked at a number of projects that we intend to work on. For example, the Grierfield Basic School. We have the Camperdown Infant and Primary School that needs a playground. We have the Postal Agency. We have a very grave concern, though, about the learning loss of students. And in that area in particular, there seems to be some amounts of challenges in terms of internet connectivity. And we are currently exploring how best we can assist. But all the communities in those areas will benefit from our scholarship programs, our agricultural programs, our sports programs, and I will tell you that in terms of number of playing fields that are built in Jamaica and schools, basic schools in particular, that have been built in Jamaica, I don't think any company can compete with WINDALCO. Of course, there are also issues to deal with water, which we are looking at. So there are a number of projects that we intend to implement. However, we do not just impose what we think is best. We sit, we consult, and we work through and determine which projects we implement in which area. But all of these areas will be considered. And currently we have advertised for scholarships, both international scholarships. We are actually sending away 22 students to Russia. 25 have returned. No, 23 of 25 have returned. The total cost of that was $100,800,000 Jamaican dollars. At the beginning, it has now been expanded because 2 have to remain in Russia to complete a particular program. We also have local scholarships, and we have directly targeted that area because we are expanding in any area we go. Additionally, there will also be employment opportunities because where we go, we try as best as possible to invest. But I would say education is key.
Education is priority for
us.
you. All right, thank you so much. That's Mr. Glendon Johnson, Human Resources Director at UC RUSAL, Alumina Jamaica Limited. Sir, at Harmony-Vale, you came to the microphone and we had to put you on hold, but it's now your turn.
Good afternoon. My name is Orius from Harmony-Vale. I just want to know if the company going to assist us with water. And the next question is, Vale money is on the list to mine.
I missed the second part of the question. What's the second part?
The Vale money is on the list to mine, Vale money.
Balimony.
Yes.
You want to know it,
Okay.
Ballymoney?
You want Mr. Johnson, Balimony? I see you
Yes.
nodding.
Yes, Ballymoney is a part of the areas that will ultimately be mined.
I've never heard of that community.
Yes, it's in the central east section of the SCPL.
And he did ask about water, but other Mr. Johnson spoke that, yes, they'll be looking at assisting with the water for the communities.
Absolutely.
That's part of their priorities. All right, where are we going now? Are we going to, which of the other two communities? We're going to Jeffreyville at this time. We have a number of people at the Jeffreyville Methodist Church.
This afternoon,
Good afternoon.
I wanted to know when Backside cut the road through the people land, if they are going to buy it or whatever they are going to do.
All right, so,
Mr. Johnson.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes,
when the Backside then owner cut the road through people land, what happens?
well, all right.
So you want to know if they're going to buy it?
Yes, and that's a very good question, moderator. We don't cut through people's land like that. By itself, it sounds as if we just go there and cut through their land. It doesn't work like that. As my colleague, Mr. Johnson, has pointed out, it's a consultative process. First, we determine if we have to pass through private landowners' properties. If it is that we must pass through the private property, then we engage the company's policy, which is to value these lands, we sit with the landowners, we have a discussion, and we try to come to a mutually accepted, fair price for the compensation associated with the full parcel or a part of the parcel as is required. But we would never cut through anybody's land.
All right, so you sit down, you meet with them, you discuss with them, and you decide and you compensate.
Absolutely.
At an agreed price between yourself and the person who owns the
is
land.
not our price. The price is normally a valuation, an independent valuation that they, the vendor, would also have the ability to check and verify to see that we're not trying to play any games with the prices.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I don't know if I had reminded you that Mr. Kurt Johnson is mining manager at RUSAL Alumina Jamaica Limited. I think we have somebody else from Jeffreyville on microphone now.
Yes, I'm Audrey Malcolm from the Gibraltar community. What I'd like to know is if a person is going to be relocated, will they be given the privilege to choose where they want to go?
All right, who's going to take that one? Yeah, Mr. Johnson, as Mr. Glendon Johnson.
As we have indicated, any form of, for example, purchasing, it has to be a matter of having a negotiation. If relocation is required, then certainly we will have to sit, discuss, and agree. And from my experience, and you might know of Happy Content in what was that?
Faith Spin St.
Faith
Ann.
Spin, which we did many years ago. You're close to that, so you can take a look at it. That scheme that was developed as a relocation project. So if it is required that we have to relocate you, it will be something that we have to sit and discuss and arrive at an amicable agreement. It is not something that we can force on your throat. It doesn't work like that.
And the person can't just choose where they want to go just so.
Yes, we recognize that we are a guest in the host communities. You are hosting us, and so we have to behave with respect, and we have to do so with honor.
Could you just remind me of the community you spoke of, the housing scheme that was developed at near to Faith Spend just now, so that people can look at it?
Happy Content.
Happy Content.
Happy Content.
Yes, Happy Content. It's
Thank you. So that was a scheme that you
Yes.
developed.
No pun intended, but the people there are very happy.
Yes. The Faith Spend community, it was originally Faith Spend. We had to relocate them in order to mine the bauxite that's there.
Okay.
So most of those residents are now living in this new scheme, and it's called Happy Content.
Thank you so very much. We have another person from Jeffreyville. This could be the last person at this time before we go to Grierfield. So, and let me thank Audrey Malcolm for that question. Yes, back to Jeffreyville. Hi, ma'am.
Good evening.
Good
evening.
My name is Clover Green
Hi, Clover.
from Gibraltar. What I'm concerned about, I really want to know for sure when they talk about if anything on them mind where you live and things like that, or what they do, if they do like the first time, like relocate you and whatever, compensate you still or whatever. I'd like to know it straight out, understand it more clear for my few words.
All right. If I'm, may I take this question?
Mr. Johnson, go right
All
ahead.
If I understand the question, Mrs. Green, if bauxite is on your property, right? If you're a landowner and the bauxite is on your property and we deem that we need to mine this bauxite, as we have said before, we would then engage in a conversation with you and your family to come up with an agreement that you are satisfied with, whether it is we're going to mine a part of your land, all of your land, which may involve relocation, and if, as Mr. Johnson says, it involves relocation, then again, that is something that you, yourself, and your loved ones would have to agree with us. We could not just relocate you. So, yes, we still do that. It's not done as regularly as we want, but it's still done. But it's always done to the mutual satisfaction of both parties. And when we mine, we try to return the lands as quickly as possible to reduce the dislocation to any, whether farmers or householders, as quickly as possible. Because as Mr. Johnson says, we are but guests.
Mr. Johnson, or Mrs. Johnson.
Yes.
I think people like this lady who just spoke, she would like, and others. Are you going to go back in the community to meet with people?
Absolutely.
Sure.
So you can sit with them and explain how the process works.
This process is just a mere application. Mining is not immediate. It is to come, but there is some time before we get to that stage.
And you'll give proper notice for people to know where you're going to meet and when and time. Okay.
This process is
yes.
about satisfying the legal ease, and then once we do that, we are going to then engage our community mechanisms.
And the process doesn't stop there, because after we begin to mine, throughout the entire time that we were there, we have an active involvement in the community through our community relations department, a well-established department. So somebody is there on the ground to deal with complaints, to deal with development of projects, etc.
So for that lady and others who have that concern, look out, make sure, that they're there to explain how it works. I think we have a question on Zoom. Sorry, Mr. Johnson, you wanted to say something quickly?
To add to what Mr. Johnson is saying, what a lot of community residents do not realize is that we don't mine or operate in absentia. The moment we start to mine in a community, there are also government entities that come along with us to create and organize the community. So immediately there'll be bauxite council meetings, bauxite council groups, and these groups would have a voice, meeting with the company and its representative regular to discuss projects that they want to see happen. And with the assistance of both ourselves and those agencies, we implement on behalf of the residents. So it's a very dynamic and ongoing and participatory process.
So it seems to me I'd like to encourage you, when you hear that these meetings are being held, go along, participate,
Absolutely.
ask your questions, make your
Absolutely.
comments. From Zoom, let me read this. Do you have any data on the effectiveness of these suggested mitigative measures in other bauxite mining communities?
Yes, we do.
Go ahead then, Mr. I'm going to call you Mr. Kurt.
Yeah.
Because
Yes, we
two
do.
Johnsons. You have Mr. Glendon and Mr. Kurt.
So before we start mining in any area, as Dr. Douglas has said, as the baseline, we need to understand the baseline. So we established, because as Ms. Green has said and others, they are concerned about their health. The study has proven that the area, while not virgin or untouched, it is very quiet and the air quality is good. So what we do, we set up dust monitoring stations at strategic locations within the mining area. What that does, it gives us data, live data, before we start operating. When we start our operations, those stations are not removed. We then have dust fallout data that we have. What that does is, by law, there's a law that says we have a standard that we must maintain. And this is what drives the dust mitigation strategies that we use. So when we talk about, for instance, to dovetail with water supply, that area has no water, right? None at all. And
No rivers there?
No, as Dr. Richard says, they're all underground, so there's no water there, right? So to manage, we must look at how are we going to get water to keep the dust to within the legal levels.
Okay.
So by virtue of that requirement, and of course we are good corporate citizens, we are going to set up, install water infrastructure to suppress dust and maybe help our community members as well.
And help the community members.
Absolutely.
Take out the maybe.
No, man, I because I can't commit my,
I know,
Mr. Johnson, but that is the strategy.
Yes. All right, we have another question from Zoom. What evidence supports that groundwater levels and flow in the special exclusive prospecting license 524 area would be similar to that determined in the Monique area to the northeast? And I think it goes on to the groundwater flow in karstic features is channeled and not always uniformed. I don't know which of you gentlemen will take that.
Oh, thanks. Thank you
Dr.
so
Douglas,
much.
yes.
Let me just mention that the study that was carried out for the hydrology and hydrogeology, it's a very important question. And what we're understanding it to mean is that one cannot strictly predict the pathways that water flows underground because it's quite variable. You know, several things, channels and so on, are created, several conduits, there are cracks, there are fissures, and as I just pointed out, this is karstic limestone. Person asks, what evidence? The best evidence that one can have is what has been done traditionally over many years in terms of the monitoring of wells that are sunk around the entire area, and there are several of them. And apart from that, what is done by persons actually going in caves and inspecting the entire area underground. And I must tell you that this has been done variously, but mainly by the Water Resources Authority. And that aspect of this report, incidentally, was written by the most authoritative person and expert in Jamaica water resources system, Mr. Basil Fernandez. And let me point out, the question is also pointed in a particular direction, and we understand and appreciate it, which is to say you can use various substances and trace the actual pathways of how the water flows beneath the ground. You can use certain chemicals like fluorescein, for example, which you can inject at certain points, and then you monitor the wells over a period of time, and you see where they turn up if they do. And you can use radioactive gold and so on and so forth. So that part has not yet been done, but when we consulted with the Water Resources Authority, they told us, and we had to consult with them on it, that this is something they were about to embark on, just to know, because water resources are important, and you have to take every action to make certain that you protect them. The point is this, and Dr. Richards presented this, that the groundwater resources are several, 100 meters below the surface where the bauxite is. The bauxite is at an average of about 20 to 30 meters. There will be no impacts anticipated from the mining of bauxite. And we need to make that clear, but nevertheless, any investigation that is being carried out can only be to the benefit of all concerned.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Conrad Douglas. WhatsApp question here now. Bauxite is a finite resource, so why is the company still pursuing this? Because they will have to find a business model when all bauxite deposits dry up. Why not switch to renewable energy production?
Bauxite is a finite resource, mineral resource, that is of economic importance. It is a part of our natural heritage, our patrimony, just like the renewable resources, such as our plants and animals and so on. So that's very important that we know if we have any value at all. And bauxite is not the only mineral that we have of value, or do have. Limestone is one. We used to mine copper in the past and various other things, lead as well. Jamaica, for the small size, is really rich in a number of things. And bauxite itself is rich in other minerals. The rare earth minerals, for example, which are so important in every single thing that you do, in industry, in aerospace, in IT, in surgery, in medicine, just about everything. You need it, and you have to have these mineral resources. So you cannot have a modern world, a modern system. All these things about the activities that we have, transportation, etc., by all means, space, air, land, sea, etc. You need to have these mineral resources. There are no substitute for it. On the other hand, it's a decision, policy decision of any company, whether they want to switch from mining a resource, which is integrated in production of the metal, to go into renewable energy. We can't answer that for them. There are several things being done in Jamaica right now in respect of renewable energy, and that's important because we also know what is happening globally in terms of climate change and so on. That's another matter.
Yes, indeed.
And we do have a major energy policy which is now under implementation with specific targets of specific. I can't answer that question on behalf of the company. They would have to say if they have any interest there whatsoever.
Okay. Any interest in renewable?
Well, we are an alumina producing company.
And that's your interest.
And bauxite is proven so far the world over to be the mineral from which we can economically produce alumina. It would be great, but I couldn't speak to that.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Kurt. And now we have another question on WhatsApp. What is the compensation health-wise, as dust will be an ongoing disturbance?
There is no set compensation as such. What actually happens is that our policy speaks to the person who has a complaint, making a complaint, and the doctor, the person's doctor, speaks to our doctor, because we are not competent in terms of medicine to do anything about it. So the doctors speak, and based on their conclusion, we act upon the decision of the doctors.
So the individual goes to their doctor, and then there's a communication between their doctor and the company doctor,
yes.
and you work from there.
And it's a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
Because, each case is on its own.
Yes.
Really.
Thank you. We have a Zoom question here. What happens if you are on land for more than 12 years, but you have no title? How will you be treated? You better go to land agency, go sort it out. Eh? No, seriously, that's a serious question.
Yes.
A number of Jamaicans operate like that.
They're untitled.
They're on land for 12 years but have no title.
Well, it's a challenging question in that what I'm supposing, the scenario I'm painting in my mind is this landowner, land occupier has bauxite on their land, and then we would need access to this property. Of course, the best case scenario is if they have a title. So we'd certainly encourage them to pursue getting a title, because there's a process under law to allow persons who can show occupancy over a certain time to pursue and get a title for that property. Because it's difficult to do a legal transaction with respect to land without the persons being titled, right?
Yes,
But
yeah.
the law has a prescription for persons who are untitled but are in possession of the lands for a certain period of time.
Yes, okay.
So that would be the advice. If you are so inclined, please, then if you know your land is bauxite bearing, because people know, right? If the neighbor has bauxite and the neighbor here has bauxite, it is likely that you have bauxite. And if you are so minded, then proceed to start getting those matters in order, because it certainly makes the process easier.
So my suggestion about the contacting the land agency is a reasonable one.
It is good, yes.
All right. Let me go to Grierfield, because they perhaps think that we have forgotten about them. Grierfield, good evening. I hope you're well. We are now going to the Grierfield Church of God.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Anita. Good evening.
Good evening,
My name
Anita.
is Anita Brian Rose.
Yes.
I am a resident at Grierfield. My question is, about water. Where we live, we have water from the Water Commission, but not every day. So we have to use tanks to store our water. So whenever this project started and the dust started affecting us, what can we do to protect us? And what will you do to protect us when dust starts falling on our water and we have no other choice?
Okay, I'm
What
going to
can we
let
do
them
at
answer.
that time?
Thank you so much, Mrs. Anita, Brian, Rose. Gentlemen from, what are you going to do when the project starts and the dust starts and them don't really have regular water? What are you going to do? Mr. Johnson?
Well, firstly, the first thing that we do is look at dust suppression and mitigation. That is what we strive to do at all times, to prevent excessive dusting. As a matter of fact, we have a policy that says if the dusting is so bad, the mining manager is obliged to stop the mining, I would say transportation of bauxite, because the mining itself doesn't really create dusting. It is the transportation of the bauxite that does, because sometimes there are spillages, etc. So we clean up the spillage from the trucks, we wet the road. However, it is quite possible that there could be some excessive dusting at times, and before we take the action, people's water could be contaminated by dust. That is something we happen to refill those tanks, because again, as I said before, we are looking at how to assist, because in going through the community, one of the complaints, major complaints that they have is the issue of water.
No water.
I do not want to elaborate at this time, but except to say that the discussion is happening intensely internally in the company. So we will address that issue.
All right. So if I'm understanding you correctly, what will happen before you start and while the operations, you have your trucks to wet the place.
And
if it gets so
goes on
bad that
continuously.
people's tanks are contaminated, then you refill them with fresh, clean water, right? And then there's something else that seems to be you are thinking of that you can't speak of too clearly at this time about
right.
water for those communities. All right.
Right.
Thank you, Mrs. Anita Brian Rose. And I'm still at Grierfield. What a beautiful name, Grierfield. Let's have the next question or comment.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thanks to the team for sensitizing us with the proposed project and giving us a glimpse of your research findings. However, what are the specific areas where mining will be done, and what are the possible areas for haul roads construction in this project area?
Thank you very much.
Right.
You didn't give me your name, so I can't address you by name. What's your name? What's your name? I'm not hearing.
Grierfield District.
I hear where you are, but I couldn't hear. Anyway, I wanted to be able to properly, address her.
Geraldine White.
Miss Geraldine, thank you so very, very much for those two questions. Two questions. What are the specific areas where mining will take place? And then the matter of the haul roads.
All right. Ms. White, good afternoon, good evening. The haul roads follow where mining will proceed. So in the south, I believe, if memory serves me correctly, the properties are called Bensington or Pedro Valley. So we'll be going from there, moving towards the north and into the center through Penny and topping out in Edinburgh Castle in the north. The haul roads would therefore follow along that path. So if you imagine we are to the right of you now in the SML, we'd cross somewhere near Grierfield, skirt around Grierfield, and somehow come up that hill and then mine along that area into finally up to Edinburgh Castle near Alderton. So we're passing through all those communities. Once bauxite is found in those areas, that's how it would progress.
Okay, and the haul road and that work
Together. Would follow.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Do we still stay at Grierfield? Yes, we have two more people at Grierfield. Let's go. Remember to give us your name so that I can at least speak to you by name. And thank you again, Ms. Geraldine White. Please go ahead, Grierfield.
Who are living in the communities with asthma, how bad will the dust affect them?
All right. This is about persons living.
Muriel Bogle.
Thank you, Ms. Muriel Bogle, persons with asthma. And I understand that because I'm an asthmatic myself.
Well, Ms. Bogle, if I may take this question. Since I've restarted here at Alka in the last 10 years, we have had one person with whom we have had to do special treatment because she was such a terrible asthma sufferer. But in general, most people, based on what we do with our dust mitigation strategies, are able to completely tolerate our operations. The biggest concerns they have is the noise, because sometimes we may want to mine on a Saturday or we may want to mine on a Sunday. And of course, we know those days are the days when we sometimes are at home or we are going to church. But outside of that, in terms of dusting levels, I do not foresee that as an asthma sufferer, you would be inconvenienced to the point that you are concerned. We will do our very best. And in fact, our best so far has proven to be quite satisfactory.
All right, thank you. We have another, thank you, Ms. Muriel Bogle. We have another question from Grierfield. You might to give your name.
My name is Clement Daniels. My question is this. Where the bauxite company have land that is not going to be mined and is not occupied, is there any possibility that the people in and around the community can have access to those land to help to build up the community?
Access to farm or access for housing?
Yes, get a clarification.
Yes, could you ask Mr. Daniels to come back to the mic, please? When you say access, Mr. Daniels, is it to be able to farm?
I said access to the farm and other development.
Okay, access to farm and other developments.
We have a very active, what we call tenant farming program, where we have lands that we lease to farmers. And some of these lands are actually mined lands that have been rehabilitated. And so that is a program that we have both in Manchester and in St. Anne. This area will not be excluded. We cannot at this point, though, give the details because we have to look at where the lands are and what are the plans we have for the lands. But certainly, we would want to have that discussion with the community.
And that arrangement already exists if the land is there and suitable for that.
Yes.
What can be added to that is we manage all the lands within our communities very, very carefully. Persons have the opportunity, if they see a parcel of land that they are interested in for a particular activity, they can write to Mr. Johnson to say, sir, we see this land, can it be leased to us for an activity? It doesn't mean that you're going to get it automatically, but certainly the request is made, and once we are here and we see what our plans are, we can also consider stuff like that.
What if somebody from outside of the community see that the land is there and come and make an application outside of the communities? Would you consider that?
Sometimes that has been considered, yes, favorably, yes. That has happened in the past.
So, Mr. Daniels, I think you've got the answer there. They have had these arrangements in the past, and this time round they would, of course, discuss and go ahead. And you say it's called Tenant Farming Program.
Tenant Farming Program.
All right, great.
It's one of the most outstanding programs that have ever been carried out in the entire island of Jamaica. And this was led by Alken as a part of what it did in relation to the development of the same outstanding Jamaica breeds of cattle for which we're internationally renowned. And so they engaged several persons in and around the communities in which they operated, and they implemented this program with great success, creating livelihoods for the people who chose to engage in farming. of various kinds.
I think Mr. Daniel said about farming and other uses.
Yes.
Are there other uses that
Yes.
the land could? You want to just touch on that quickly for me?
Well, it's because it's not strictly mining, and we're discussing the potential mining, but by way of example, for persons who live in Williamsfield, in Kirkvine, Manchester, they have been engaged. Lands have been leased to persons for non-mining activities. Non-farming
Non-farming,
activities.
yes, non-farming.
Near to the plant in Yorton, persons have received lands that are not bauxite mine lands, but are under the company's control for other commercial activities.
Not
So-
farming alone.
Not farming
Okay,
alone.
so they'll
there-
have to come and sit and
Yes,
discussion
make
would
the
have
request.
to ensue.
We don't know all the answers, but I mean, if we have, we tend to have a lot of land under our control, and it's not necessarily all of it. As you can see, only 8% of it we're going to actually be mining. So there's a lot of land that is available, but we don't know yet, right? So we are encouraging persons to think about it, make their requests known, and in time we will consider, because there's lots of opportunity to sit and discuss.
Thank you, Mr. Kurt. Where do I go now? Do we have any more questions? We're still at Grierfield. Wow. There's a lot of people there. Grierfield, you're leading here, man. Could you just say your name?
I represent the Grierfield Farm Group. There are a lot of young people in this area, and there is no recreation area for these young people.
Good.
I'm wondering if WINDALCO will be kind enough to do something for these young people by providing an area where they can have recreation, cricket, football, and other things, you know, and even an area where they could have a building where they could go for evening classes and so on, because this is a very large area and these young people really need help.
Thank you. I didn't get your name, though. Anyway, this is an important one. The young people.
June Stennett.
Miss June Stennett, thank you so much. Recreation area for young people.
That's a very good question.
Yes.
I can tell you now that we have already taken the decision to make a play area for a Grierfield basic school, because all they have is just 2 tires.
2 what?
Two tires.
2 used car
2
tires.
used tires, that's all they have?
Yes, so we have made that decision already in consultation with members of the
school.
community. As regards an area, a play area, is something that we are willing to explore. We are willing to explore.
Mrs.
And
Stennett?
we will be meeting with a number of community groups, including that group.
Yes,
So-
the young farm group.
Yes, and we are interested in the youth. She spoke about evening classes.
Yes.
We have had what was called the Second Chance program, where we look at students in the environment, in the operating area, who did not do well at school, and we had evening classes in 6C. Because first of all, we used to sponsor the 6C subjects long ago, and the government started to piggyback on that program, believe it or not. It started that Alcan in that day. And then we went to the Second Chance program to give some people a second chance. So we had evening classes for people who wanted to come. And we have a few very good success stories from that program. That is something that we would love to look at in that area. So let's have this discussion. We are ready to sit and discuss with you, with your community group, as we always do in our operating areas.
So for Mrs. June Stennett, then you would encourage the members of the community to sit and discuss, because that recreational space with a space for evening classes, your Second Chance program, very, very important, particularly now.
Exactly. And that group is also a member of the Schwellenberg WINDALCO JBI Joint Community Council Benevolent Society. So we can have a discussion at that level.
That's a long name.
It's a very long name, because it's a lot of people coming together in partnership.
But let me just thank Mrs. Stennett for putting that on the table, because, you know, the young people just need a space, and the evening classes are so necessary, particularly now. Where do we go now? We're still
With internet.
one more from Grierfield. Grierfield, remember, but just let me finish talking, and then when you go to the microphone, say your name, the first thing, and then we will move from there. Thank you so much, Grierfield. Go ahead.
Anisha Kirkland. I am a resident of Grierfield. We are low. We are low on employment here. I'm wondering how will this impact us on employment, and what will happen to the flora and fauna as we have 2 endangered species.
All right. Thank you for that, Anisha Kirkland from Grierfield. The employment.
Ms. Kirkland, as I had indicated before, whenever time we go into a new mining area, we specifically, deliberately seek out persons in there to be employed in a number of different areas. What I cannot give you is the numbers. What I can tell you for sure is that we will be employing people from within SCPL.
Mr.
5 to
Glendon.
4, once we get the approval.
What kind
to
of
manage.
jobs? People, next question is what kind of jobs?
We have drivers for trucks. We have scale house operators, blenders.
Excavator
Blenders?
operators. Yes.
It's looking at different bauxite percentages and blending it together to send to the plant. It's not so.
So
that's casual as it sounds.
it's not casual at all. It's scientific, if you ask me, when you talk about a blender.
So we will look at what our needs are, and we will certainly apply that. But I can say of a certainty, because we have a direct strategic policy that says once you go into that area as a guest, you need to do all you can. And employment is one of the things that education and employment, those are the 2 main focus.
And she asked about flora and fauna.
Yes.
Yes, is you that, Dr. Douglas?
Yes, this is a very, very important question, and I'm so glad that the point went across to the extent that you can remember that those 2 particular species were mentioned by Dr. Richards during his presentation. One was the yellow-tailed, the yellow-billed parrot. Which is a very important species of bird for us. And when we went out in the field, our scientists who did that study, the avifauna study, they did in fact identify them, not just once, and we have some detailed photographs to show, flocks up in trees and so forth. The good news is, if we can say it's good news, is that their habitats are up in the vegetated hillocks or hillsides, and not in the lowland area.
Because the bauxite is not on the hillocks, it's on the flat or relatively flat area.
Yes, that's correct. So that will help tremendously. But whatever is necessary in terms of all the precautions to be made to protect those species will be done. And the same thing applies to the plant species that was identified.
So you collect some of the plant species and do what with them?
It is called creative conservation. So before any mining starts, you identify these species exactly where they're located, and so on, and then you develop a plan which involves training various persons, as to how to treat with them in terms of picking them up and relocating them to other places in the same SCPL that will not be impacted. And you have another plan which is to create a greenhouse or greenhouses, and you put them temporarily, and once mining is finished and rehabilitation done, you can take them and put them back into it.
I hope that answers your question, and thank you for your concern, Anisha Kirkland. We do now go back to Zoom. The EIA has spent a considerable amount of time describing the baseline conditions, but not enough details on impact assessment. Where are the detailed management plans stating how will this actually be done?
It's a fair question. You have to do a comprehensive baseline assessment to know what you're dealing with. And as Dr. Richards described in the presentation, and is documented clearly and in great detail in the EIA itself, to look at all the biological resources that's there. We had to look at the people, how they live, where they do live, and the local economy, as well as the archaeological, historical heritage resources. So having done that, that now gives you, the sort of information that you need to develop the management plan and management strategy. And this is something that cannot be done totally and exhaustively at this stage. You do it as you proceed. So that the last part of the presentation, you will recall, speaks to the whole business of an environmental monitoring and management plan. And it lists all of the parameters that must be monitored and managed. At that stage, you begin to develop these plans in great detail. Now, should NEPA, NRCA, choose to grant RUSAL WINDALCO an environmental permit, they will be putting in all of the conditions that they require to be satisfied in the development of these plans. So it's not detailed at the stage of the EIA, but at the point of permitting. And NEPA will give specific timelines to every single one of these conditions which must be satisfied. And all these plans must be developed and produced and approved by them and implemented by the proponent as they proceed. It's a very, very critical thing. It's a long, involved process. And of course, there is also another part of it which they usually have, which most people are not even aware of or taking to a closure plan as a part of the condition.
What's a closure plan?
Closure plan means in the event that you have to close the operations, what are the steps that you will take in respect of, for example, rehabilitating what is there and outstanding? How will you dispose of any equipment? How will you dispose of any material? Anything that could be hazardous in terms of any lubricants and so on, and any chemicals that you might have to manage in the course of your operation. So, as Dr. Richards pointed out at the beginning, this is just a summary. When the permit is issued, should a permit be issued, another phase is opened up for action by the company and its consultants.
Thank you, and thank you for your question. We're going back to Zoom for yet another question. The EIA by Conrad Douglas and Associates is almost exactly the same as the one they did for SML 173 in terms of reference to damage, compensation, mitigation, etc. Why does it seem that all potential negative impacts are being downplayed and benefits highlighted and mitigation measures presented as easily accomplished?
I think that question is an unfortunate one. We are not downplaying anything. This is an objective scientific investigation, and we report on what we found during the course of the investigation. And we propose the mitigation or methods to even avoid particular impact. Because of the nature of bauxite itself, it is extremely difficult to separate and differentiate mitigation methods. The potential impacts in most instances are usually quite similar. So it's not a question of downplaying or anything. These are potential impacts, and we need to stress potential. And in the same way, we need to say these are proposed mitigation strategies. And these will have to be developed further and approved by the regulatory agencies as we proceed. Okay. So there's no bias, just to answer the question, at all in what we do. We are scientists, engineers, and planners, and we have to make certain that whatever we do is transparent and is subject to the most rigorous of analysis, as long as they are objective as well.
Thank you, Dr. Douglas. We have yet another question coming in from Zoom. RUSAL has not lived up to their word in other communities that they have mined, so who says they will do this in this area? I wish you had said in what way they had, so at least I could ask them specifically in what way they haven't lived up to their word. I'm not certain how you're going to deal with that.
I cannot answer that question because
if you get a chance, just give us the details, of what you mean, so at least you can be specific. Let me go to the WhatsApp. You have Jeffreyville? You want me to go to Jeffreyville? Okay, let's go to Jeffreyville. Just remember to say your name before you start. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. My name is Tashania Trail, and I'm from Gibraltar. My question to WINDALCO, or young people, I suspect, and other persons here would be in your employ during the mining operations. I want to know about the healthcare packages that you guys have available for them. because one of you on the panel mentioned something about those that are in the mining area specifically will be most affected. And whilst we understand that, I also would like to make a proposition because as you will notice throughout the communities when they mention, the question that keeps coming up is a concern about the dust and or health. So my proposition to you is it possible at like 6-month intervals for you to do checkups in our communities? What are you putting in place to ensure that our residents are, at optimal health and that they're not essentially, because we have very nice, clean, fresh air down here and everybody loves it this way. Most people come to country for that reason. And we just want to keep it that way. And if we can't keep it that way, we need your help to ensure that our residents are in the absolute best of health. So how are you going to be able to
Thank you,
support
Ms.
us in that
Trail.
endeavor?
Thank you. Very, very important point you have raised. Ms. Trail from Gibraltar, Tashina Trail, speaking about healthcare packages for persons who are in your employ, and then the proposition about the 6-monthly checkup and how you're going to move with that. Let me go to the HR person, Ms. Trail. He's best suited. Mr. Glendon Johnson, Human Resources Director.
I particularly like the fact that that she has put forward a proposal. Firstly, we do not have a healthcare package for employees as such. We do have a health plan. With respect to checkups every 6 months, is something that we can look at. In the past, we have had mobile clinics that we have in other areas, so it's something that we can explore. We are open to that kind of proposal. So again, let's look at it. But I can't definitely say I didn't have that in my plan. We have, as I said, some things, and we are willing to sit at all times, discuss, and arrive at what is it that we can do. So we are willing to look at it, certainly.
All right. I'm glad to hear that. And Ms. Trail, I'm just so impressed when a young person can make this kind of contribution, So we are to take one more from Jeffreyville, and then we go to a phone call after that. So Jeffreyville, remember to say your name.
Good night. My name is Alma Chambers, and I'm from Gibraltar District. My question is a long shot question. After the mining and those holes that they have mined out from, what will they do to, cover those holes or to, make sure those holes are, maybe used for wells or water or something? What will they do after mining with those sinkholes?
Thank you, Ms. Chambers. You should call them sinkhole. What are you going to do with them?
All right, Ms. Chambers, good afternoon.
And Ms. Chambers, I should tell you, if you didn't hear before, this gentleman is Mr. Kurt Johnson, the mining manager, best person to answer.
I invite you to come on a tour with me anytime you feel like by Schallenberg, and I'll carry you to what happens with those holes as you described them. But by law, we can't leave the holes in the ground. The law requires that at latest 3 years after the government agrees that we've mined out the bauxite, that we fill them in and we reshape them, make them into not holes anymore. Sometimes they become play fields. Sometimes they become housing. Sometimes they become pastures. Sometimes they become farming holdings, right? So when we do, at the end of the process, hopefully we will not be leaving any sinkhole or wells in and around Grierfield.
And you say you can see that at Schallenberg.
Anytime she wants, a contingent, we could take them on a tour so that they can see firsthand the kind of work that we do.
That's important. That would be important for them to see. All right. Thank you so much.
May I add
yes, go ahead, Mr. Johnson.
What we are also hoping to do is to replicate the use of some of these mine-out pits for water harvesting, for greenhouse farming, as we have done in Schallenberg and Manchester. Oh. And I think that it will be of great economic benefit to the community if we do that.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Glendon Johnson. I do believe we have online at this time Lisa Hanna, Member of Parliament for South East St. Anne. Thank you for joining us,
Thank you,
MP.
Good evening to the panelists. and the members from UC RUSAL, and a particular good evening and special good evening to the residents from Harmonyville, Grierfield, and Jeffreyville. My connection was very, very bad where we were, so we weren't able to do the video call.
We're good with the audio, though. You may go ahead.
Sure. UC RUSAL is very familiar with my sentiments about their proposed mining in Bensonton and other areas in Monique. They already have mining operations taking place in Monique. And I am very, very concerned about it. At a grave digging yesterday up in Crossroads up in Bensonton, I was discussing it with the residents, and I've already sat with Dr. Douglas's team to express how we feel and how some of the residents. The concerns stem around agriculture, because Bensonton is an agricultural belt. We have a lot of small cash crop farmers there. And from our historical experience, and even if you look over at Southwest St. Anne, even though the technocrats speak about reclamation of land, it never comes back to its original esteem and pristine soil. So we're concerned about that. The other thing we're concerned about is just the upheaval. If it is going to be 22 years, that is significant upheaval. And I think sometimes even some of the older residents believe that it is going to mimic the old type of Reynolds plant that used to be done in Lidford. There's tremendous technical transfer now as it relates to bauxite mining. So there's not a lot of jobs that's going to be produced by the company. And we need to have a larger discussion and a more in-depth, intimate discussion in the communities so that they can really understand what is going to happen, not only with the production of the bauxite and the mining of the bauxite, but what really happens with the expatriation of the funds when it leaves the country.
Okay.
We have a very, very close-knit community up in Bensonton and places like Monique. Yes, farmers are able to get small parcels of land in Grierfield and in Harmonyville now if they ask. But the other issue, and for years, WINDALCO has a well going up to Harmonyville, and the residents don't have access to it. So we need to
Miss
have some
Hannah,
very
Miss Hannah, could you just give me a break with this one? Is there a well that the residents don't have access to, Mr. Johnson?
Good afternoon, MP Lisa Hannah.
Hi, how are you doing, Mr. Johnson?
The well that you refer, would it be the Allerton well?
Yeah, the one going, yes.
Okay. But you know the situation with Allerton well. WINDALCO in the past used to operate that well as part of the dairy operations, and for operational efficiencies that well was discontinued. So it was never a public well.
We know that.
Right. So
but many times the same lady who asked about access to water, and you yourself said that there was no water leading up to the area. Many times the residents said, can we get access to the well because it would help with the water distribution. So
all right.
I'm hoping because the community relations with UC RUSAL in their current dispensation in the constituency is not very good.
All right,
and I just have to speak the truth in this meeting.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hannah. We do have a number of other people who would like to have an input here. Member of Parliament for Southeast St. Anne, Lisa Hannah, could you address the need that she has raised, which is you need to have more meetings with the community? I think she has said or intimated that you haven't had enough.
But through you, moderator, let's address the comments the MP made about dislocation of farmers, other things, right? First, let's talk about water. As I said before, this area is going to be approximately 20 kilometers from where we're currently operating. Logically, logistically, there is no water infrastructure in that area of St. Anne. No fault of WINDALCO's market. We used to have a well in that area that has been discontinued a long time now. And
she's asking why not restart it to help the community.
It is some of the options that has to be looked at now. Remember, we are seeking permission to mine here. If we get permission to mine, we have a duty on the law to suppress the dust, to keep the air at the levels that it is now. One of the easiest ways to do that is to rehabilitate this existing infrastructure and therefore then make this part of the strategy going forward. We currently have no operations there save and except for a small dairy operation, right? As it relates to farming and in Bensington and some of these, we understand that there are farmers there. And what we have committed to, as we have done in other areas, where farm holders are concerned, we will provide alternative parcels of land if their land is required for bauxite mining, and in turn return them as quickly as possible. The comment about the lands not being in terms of yield as they were prior to mining, I challenge that, because our tests, we have greenhouse farmers where the lands are yielding more than they were before, right? Of course, when you leave farmers alone, some of these farmers are not wealthy, and hence, because it's topsoil, they don't apply the amount of fertilizers that we would have applied when we originally returned the lands to them, and hence the yields fall. But it's not a function of the ability of the lands to yield.
So it seems then that some more sessions with members of the community to help them to learn how to get more yields from the land.
Absolutely.
And her point is you need to have more meetings. That's what she's saying.
That point,
Yes.
because let MP Hannah be assured that we have not yet moved into Bensington, by the way, but we have started the process in terms of dialogue and engagement with the community, and they are part of the Schradenberg Community Council I mentioned earlier on. And we will certainly be having more frequent interaction with the community. But we are not there yet. We are seeking to go in there, but we have started the process. Yes. And MP Hannah, you can always reach me when you can. We are willing to sit with you. We are willing to engage you in whatever process, because I think both of us are sharing the same objective, which is development of a community.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Let's have further discussion on that.
Thank you. Just before I go back to Jeffrey, I think that's where I should be going. Jeffreyville, just before that, Dr.
Yes,
Conrad Douglas has an input.
Thank you so much, Madam Moderator. Just to express our gratitude to MP Anna for meeting with us as a part of the voluntary consultation process, in which she did express some of these concerns, and they are documented, and they are part of what we have to present to the regulator in the process. As pointed out by Mr. Johnson, this whole process of mining and rehabilitation and so presents a number of opportunities. And both Johnsons pointed it out as we went through the process. In this time, we are talking about issues to do with climate change, and water is a very serious problem, and it's only going to get worse. And to the extent that, people are going to be scrambling, not just a Jamaican thing, all over the world for water and water resources. Mining does present opportunities for one to create artificial systems to harvest and to store water, and that can be of enormous benefit to the community. So I think that they will, as mentioned earlier, they have taken it into account and will be taking it into account. Just to mention a particular point, and I mean, this is about the whole business of objectivity again. We don't speak about restoration of mined out land. They cannot be restored to the condition in which they were found originally. We talk about reclamation of the area, and sometimes it's a bit bigger, and we speak about rehabilitation. And that is the operative word, rehabilitation. Okay. And as Mr. Johnson pointed out, the rehabilitated land, when properly managed, can yield a greater amount of produce or whatever you put with it. So that's a possibility. So, and then just to close off this with a final comment, what I'm hearing and what we know is that more and more consultations, which the first Mr. Johnson spoke about, is going to be needed. They're not there yet. I would recommend and suggest that they begin to structure these from now.
Thank you so much. And just before I go back to Jeffreyville Methodist Church, please remember that all these questions and comments will form the official record of this meeting. All of these questions and comments will form part of the official records of this meeting. Jeffreyville, please remember, say your name, and then let us hear your question or comment.
Yes, good evening to the platform party. I believe you're doing a very wonderful job.
Thank you, sir.
Well, my name is Orion Hines, and I'm from the wonderful parish called Clover Hill. That's the district, Clover Hill. Now, I am not an expert when it comes to mining, but I believe when one is mining, blasting must take in consideration.
No.
Now, my property, you may look and say that I am not in close proximity to where you will be mining. So now, the blasting process,
Hold on,
I'm not
Mr.
sure
Hines. You can hear me, Mr.
how far
Hines?
will that go, if it will affect me. And I wouldn't want it to be a case where after you leave our community, in a couple of years' time, my house start to crack up. So could you just inform me and let me know how far the blasting?
I am going to them right now with it, sir. Blasting, Mr. Kurt.
All right.
Blasting will
Good afternoon,
occur.
Mr. Hines. Well, let me first dispel something. When we mine, we don't engage blasting. If blasting is required, it is normally associated with work in the limestone, which is construction of the haul roads, if we meet upon very difficult material, and sometimes in reclamation. When we're shaping the pit, sometimes the dozers are unable to cut the limestone, and hence we might have to blast. I can't speak specifically to where your house is now relative to where the road may go, because Clover Hill, if my memory serves correctly, is currently outside of current discussions with where the proposed road alignment would be. So I am not expecting at this time that blasting would be of any concern, material concern to your house or household, because we would be crossing further south of Clover Hill near to the Grierfield area if this proposal, if we are allowed permission to turn this area into a mining lease. So you should not have any concern where blasting is concerned.
All right, thank you, Mr. Johnson. We have a WhatsApp
Perhaps
question.
just for
Sorry,
clarity,
Mr. Glendon.
we could say when we are doing, if we have to do blasting, there is what is called a pre-blasting survey.
Yes.
Where an independent inspector comes in, inspects the structure, take pictures, and have them there. After blasting, they come back, take pictures, and look if there's any structural damage. If there happens to be any damage at all, then we now enter into negotiation to make sure that we bring back your property to the original state.
And
the distance, I don't remember.
Yes, and as to add to that, thank you, Mr. Johnson, for reminding me. By law, we have to blast to design the blast in such a way that the vibrations, which is what you would feel, you'd hear the sound wave, you'd hear the sound, and then you'll feel the vibrations. Well, you'll feel the vibrations first because they're faster. But by law, we're required to design the blast in such a way that the vibrations at the given distances away are at levels that would not cause structural damage, right? By law, we're required to survey everything that is in a half-mile radius of the proposed blast sites and keep those vibrations within the permissible levels. So where we're crossing, again, it's more than half-mile away from where you are, and hence I don't anticipate that if blasting is required that you would in fact be at all be affected.
And also importantly, because we recognize that people can hear this blast and
this noise,
frightened. You may have old persons in the community who are ill. We have to give notice that we are going to blast. So when you hear it, you do. And if somebody is very ill, sometimes they can be taken out of the community for that period of time.
Yes.
So that's very important.
Thank you for that. And Mr. Hines of Clover Hill, I hope your question has been answered. I'm going to Harmonyvale Baptist Church. Remember to give your name.
Winston Riley, Harmonyville Baptist Church. My question is, when mining is taking place in this area, is there any plan for relocation of resident or church or school?
Mr. Riley, good afternoon and thank you for your question, sir. The matter of relocation of any structure, church, school, or homes, depends entirely on whether bauxite is on the property and in what quantity, and also if we can come to a mutually satisfactory agreement with the occupier of said household or building. So for instance, if there is a church and bauxite is under the church, it is more than likely that we are not going to go and remove the church. It has happened in the past, but it is something that we would try our best to avoid. If a householder is on property that has bauxite-bearing lands and we deem that it is in sufficient quantity to make the acquisition a viable one, then we would have, as we had said before, a discussion, a mutual discussion where we sit down both parties and we come to an agreement about the price and the other things associated with said sale of properties to allow access to mining.
Thank you so much, Mr. Riley. And I think we have a WhatsApp question here. So we are coming very near the close of this virtual meeting. Productivity of the land can never be significantly restored for people or the existing ecosystems. Which tree can grow in 24 inches of soil? You have only highlighted agricultural productivity, but failed to mention the prospects of restoring ecological productivity. It done there, sir? All right. Which tree can grow in 24 inches of soil?
We pointed out from the very outset how Jamaican bauxite was discovered. And it is simply a matter of the fact that it does not support the growth of large trees. And when Sir Alfred was about to plant bananas, they wouldn't grow at all. So that's why he investigated it. Government chemist at the time, Mr. Innis, carried out the analysis and found out this was rich in aluminum. To confirm this, he sent it to England. England found the same thing. And so you might not be able to grow bananas, but you'll soon be able to produce aeroplanes, which is one of the things that we use aluminum metal to do.
So the short answer is that trees don't grow in soil where there is bauxite. Am I understanding it clearly?
That is the point.
Yes.
Perfect. Does not. But in respect of the other questions about restoring, we spoke about the matter of restoration, rehabilitation, and reclamation. Rehabilitation, when you do it and you do it, it is done properly. You can, in fact, get production and productivity that was even higher than what existed before. And the fact is that they produce a lot of vegetables and so on and so forth. In respect of the species that you use to cover, the grass species, again, you can get productivity that supports the cattle that we spoke of. And to the extent that you have excellent beef cattle, excellent dairy cattle as well. So the fact of the matter is that, yes, sometimes you don't necessarily get the same level of productivity for the specific type of crop and so on, but you do get productivity that for some types of things might be even greater than what you had before.
So putting in your calorie or your tomato and so on, that should not be a problem.
Cabbage and a whole host of other things and so forth.
But big trees, well, I was looking at some of the pictures. Really, the area where there is, well, it is flat and not. It's
Sweet
in the valley.
potato, a lot of things like that grow very, very well.
But not big trees in that environment. All right. Am I to go to that WhatsApp question?
And in terms of the ecology, as we said before, but that's a very important part of the question which the person asked. It's not impacted. The grassland does not host a great amount of biomass, not a great amount of biodiversity. It's very important nevertheless, because there are some species there that form food for other species, such as birds and so on. So what we have found from rehabilitation of mined out areas is that the amount of, let's say, species that was food for others increased beyond what was there previously. And the level of biodiversity or types of species was even greater than what was there before.
All right. Is that it? We are at the final question. Yes, final question, and we want to thank everybody who participated. But this question is, what will be the economic impact of this mining compared to the loss of income to approximately 2,000 farmers? Mr. Johnson?
What will be the
economic impact of this mining compared to the loss of income to approximately 2,000 farmers?
Madam Moderator, let me point out that this question has come up indirectly in a number of ways throughout this virtual meeting. but we have not paused to look at it. And one of the things that we need to recognize is that during this pandemic, which has been with us for a long while now, and which will be with us from all indications for some time to come, the bauxite sector, mining, was the number one on alumina production. The number one sector in Jamaica's economy throughout this time, when tourism is down flat on its knees. So if we didn't have it, we'd be in serious trouble. And this is why I think most of us do agree now in the society that we need to diversify our economy. This is one of the parts of the economy that is already speaking to diversity. Remember that bauxite alumina was the number one sector in Jamaica's economy for a long time, up to 1974, and it's still a critical player. It has always been among the first three sectors in Jamaica's economy. There's no question about its importance. It is foreign exchange earning. It is a vertically integrated industry, which means that you make alumina from bauxite. The alumina you sell overseas, and you make it into aluminum. And the demand is worldwide and of great importance. So it's almost guaranteed. It doesn't suffer from viruses to the same extent, for example, that other activities, like our tourism has been impacted and so on. In respect of the 2,000 farmers, there will not be any 2,000 farmers that will be displaced, dislocated, or will lose their livelihood as a result of this activity. It is not mutually exclusive as far as mining and farming and other activities are concerned. And all the policies and the procedures and steps will be taken and have been taken in the past to ensure that there is minimum impact on that. In fact, it could prove to be beneficial, as we have been pointing out from time to time. So we must face the reality of the situation. And as was presented, we must make certain that we do everything to maximize any potential positive benefits from what we might be doing should a mining license.
I think I'm giving you the final word then, Mr. Johnson.
To support Dr. Douglas's point, and I don't want it to escape us, where we are proposing to start the new lease, most of the lands that are there that bears bauxite now are unoccupied. They are unoccupied lands. Most of the acreages. And if I was to quote a percentage out of my head, more than 80% of the lands on which bauxite has been found thus far are unoccupied.
Just to stress the point a bit, sorry.
You're going to let them throw me out.
Dr. Richards stated at the beginning that the place is sparsely populated. I'm just simply supporting the point.
Yes.
And if you look at the images, you have to search to find people. A few ribbon developments, meaning a few developments along the roadways that are there. And that's the reality. That's what we found from the investigation.
Yes. Nothing serious happening, just a bottle of water fell. Let me thank all of you. Dr. Conrad Douglas, Executive Chairman and Principal Consultant, Conrad Douglas and Associates Limited. Dr. Mark Richards, who did the Environmental Impact Assessment presentation. Technical Director, Conrad Douglas and Associates Limited. Mr. Glendon Johnson, Human Resources Director at RUSAL Alumina Jamaica Limited. And Mr. Kurt Johnson, Mining Manager, RUSAL Alumina Jamaica Limited. As you put up your hand, I don't know why you put it. Oh, you're the original, and he's the, okay. And we want to thank you all, especially those persons who gathered at Harmonvale Baptist Church, the Jeffreyville Methodist Church, and the Grierfield Church of God. Thank you so much for taking the time. This is important to you and your community and for your future. Thanks a lot. Thank you for joining us this evening for this mixed virtual public meeting. Again, we apologize for the technical difficulties, including Zoom. You are being reminded that while the time may not have allowed for all your questions to be posted or answered in this live meeting, all questions, every single one of them, all comments received have been recorded from all media platforms and will be addressed and included in the verbatim records of this meeting, which must be submitted to NEPA within 7 days of this meeting. Further, you are allowed an additional 21 days to submit any questions or comments you have to the National Environment and Planning Agency via email, and here's the email address, applications@nepa.gov.jm. That's applications@nepa.gov.jm. Or if you want to send the mail or drop it off, you go to 10 Caledonia Avenue, Kingston 5. You can post it to 10 Caledonia Avenue, Kingston 5. All questions received will be submitted to the environmental consultant, and responses must be provided by them and submitted to NEPA. And of course, remember that the Environmental Impact Assessment Report and its companion documents may be accessed at the following locations. And listen carefully, you want to see the report, you want to see all the documents that accompany the report, you can go to the National Environment and Planning Agency's Documentation Center, which is at 11 Caledonia Avenue, Kingston 5. And here are some other locations where you can find the impact assessment and the documents. In St. Anne, Harmonyvale Basic School, Bensontown Postal Agency, Emmanuel Wisdom Center, Praise Center Church, Mount Waddy Primary School, I just love that name, Mount Waddy Primary School, Jeffreyville Basic School, St. Anne Parish Council in St. Anne's Bay, and you can find it on NEPA's website, which is www.nepa.gov.jm, or the Conrad Douglas and Associates Limited website at www.cdaestech. That one I kind of, listen again. C as in cat. DAESTECH. That's cdaestech.com. Again, we thank you for your participation. Remember to observe the COVID-19 protocols. And I'd like to thank a young lady who was very helpful by ensuring that the teleprompter, and she tell her to put up her name, and she has not put up her name, but that's another matter. It's Luann, did I get that right? Yes, thank you so much for your assistance. It was really very, very helpful. Everyone, walk good. Tell them other one how to do.
JNN and Power 106 FM has just presented a live broadcast on environmental impact assessment for proposed bauxite mining operations in the Special Exclusive Prospecting License 524 area, presented by RUSAL Alumina Jamaica Limited, WINDALCO, and Conrad Douglas and Associates Limited. For more information, visit www.cdaestech.com.